Hi, everybody. Welcome to another adventure and episode of From Adversity to Awakening, Transforming Hardship into Greater Spiritual Connection and Joy. I'm your host, Peggy O'Neill, and I am so glad you're here. I have a very special guest today, Robin Mastro. Hi, Robin. And before I introduce her, let you know a little bit more about her. Robin is this awesome creative sage, and I will let you know. But I first want to remind you, if you haven't subscribed yet to our uh, podcast, would love if you would do that. Invite a friend, send a review, all of that great stuff really helps me out. And today we're going to be, Robin's going to be sharing with us about uh, her life as a Vastu creator. And I will share with you now a little bit about what that is. So she's the co-founder of Vastu Creations, LLC, and the American Institute of Vastu, focusing on enhancing productivity and well-being by eliminating environmental stress. Very interesting, right? With over 30 years as a teacher of meditation and Vedic breathing for the Art of Living Foundation, her research into the power of altars led her to explore ancient cultures and their unseen connections. Sounds very interesting. Can't wait to hear more about it. Robin has authored 3 award-winning books on Vastu, Altars of Grace and Altars of Power and Grace, The Way of Vastu, and okay, ladies, listen up, single ladies, making room for Mr. Right. She dedicates herself to helping people live healthier, more harmonious lives through her books, courses, and services. And at the end, we're going to talk about if you want to learn more about her. Well, her website is, and she has an offering for a new course that she's putting together called the Altars of Power and Grace course. And you can go to www.vastu, VASTU, creations.com/special. Right, Robin? Is that right? Yeah. Okay, good. And she has a discount offer. We're going to tell you about that at the end. But before we go into talking to you about your adversity, which is the topic of this podcast, I would love for you to explain a little bit to the audience that may not be familiar with what Vastu is and is not.
Vastu is the 7 to 10,000-year-old science of living in harmony with nature. It's the science where the well-known Feng Shui came from, but Feng Shui is about 2,500 years old, and Vastu is 7 to 10,000 years old. Vastu comes from a body of knowledge from India called the Vedas. And I consider it like a encyclopedia of everything that is seen and unseen in the universe. And
Mm,
within the Vedas is everything from astronomy to jet propulsion to zoology.
wow.
And within the compendium of the Vedas is an area called Atharvaveda, which talks about how to live in harmony with your body, with the universe, so that you move through life with more grace and ease.
Mhm.
And there are within that area of Atharvaveda are things like Ayurveda, which is like the first medicine,
Right.
yoga, which we all are aware of, medit
Yoga, yeah.
meditation, martial arts, astrology known as Jyotish, which is the original astrology, and Vastu Shastra, which is the science of building. So what we do is we've created a technology to be able to align and reduce the stress in any environment, whether it's a home or an office or a dorm room, whatever it is, so that you function optimally within that space. And we've been doing that. My husband and I have been doing this. It's been our service and our business since the 90s. We've been doing it, but he is one of the foremost scholars and practitioners of Vastu in the world.
Michael
And
Mastro, yeah.
so
Yeah, he's an awesome dude, everybody. And he obviously, that together they've built this amazing body of knowledge where you can optimize your living space so that you get all the support of nature that is available to you. And I think it's, we can do, there's so many things, like you said, and there's a lot of unseen things and a lot of things that we don't maybe know about, that some things in the wrong corner. And I don't know if you're familiar with Feng Shui, but there's your power corner and your love corner and all that stuff. It's like that you can learn about that and then create an environment that will support you in every way. So thank you for sharing with us about that. And I would just want to comment that something I listened to yesterday that impressed on me very much about the Vedas and the Vedic tradition. And this woman was saying, so many cultures have come and gone. The Roman, the Aztecs, the this, the that. She went down a long list and then she said, but you know what? The Indians, they have always, and the Veda has always been here. It goes 7 to 10,000 years. It has not disappeared. And the knowledge that they behold is something that is, that people have been looking to through all ages and all cultures. So just
Even when you look at the architecture of the Romans and the Greek and the Egyptians and the Mayan ruins, they all have aspects of Vastu,
uh-huh.
all aligned to the cardinal directions. They all fit on the north, south, east, west grid. So, and they all are aligned to true north. So this is very, very interesting. It's the basic premises have always been there in the most enduring structures. And what we've noticed for people who we've done Vastu for is that, I mean, even here where I live in the San Diego area, we had a huge fire when I moved here like 15 years ago. And all the houses in this one area um, were burnt to the ground, except the one house that my husband did Vastu on. It was still standing. And that's not the only story like that.
Oh
So I
my God,
know
that's amazing. That's
we're
amazing. I mean, sorry for the other people, but okay, you guys got to take your course. So, okay, let's get into the meat and magic of from adversity to awakening, if we might. And I just wanted people to know about what you do and where you're coming from. So, share with us a little bit about your greatest adversity or adversities and how they impacted your life and you.
Well, I think the one, I think we all have, some
Many.
of the drama that we dealt with growing up. And I
Yeah.
think one for me is before Mike and I were a couple, I was married to another man. And, and I give a little background information because you and I, Peggy, come from a certain generation where
Yes, exactly.
I think it's hard for millennials to understand this. I know my daughter doesn't understand, but we didn't have a whole lot of psychological, spiritual references. We were pretty much the groundbreakers. So it wasn't like,
Didn't have any YouTube. We didn't really even have any movies except some kind of crazy idealized notion of what a relationship should be. How to know who you're supposed to be with, how to know what your dharma, what your purpose in life is. We didn't have any information about any of that.
no, there was none of that. And I remember even when my
Passion
daughter,
test, nothing, nothing, nobody asking you about what turns you on, which direction do you,
nothing, there was nothing. And I
nothing.
remember when I had my daughter, and I had this desire to like breastfeed, which, was unheard of at the time because we were all bottle fed, or a majority of us were. And
Right.
I think that the only reference I had for raising her was Dr. Spock and the La Leche League. And it was very kind of fringy to want to breastfeed. So it was a whole different time. There wasn't any information. There was nowhere to go for it because there was nothing written about it. It didn't come until much later.
No
So
Tony Robbins, no Est, no
nothing.
landmark forum, none of that.
None of it. There was just nothing. And so I remember, um, I grew up in Northern California. Guys were not real communicative. And I met a man when I was in my late 20s who was very kind of social and chatty and interested in me. And I was like surprised because I didn't have that with the guys that I grew up with. And he was from the South. He was very charming. And so we eventually got married. And I didn't know, no, I didn't know to ask the questions about what I needed.
Yeah.
And so we ended up as he revealed himself over time. And I don't even think I wanted to know because I was ready to get married and have kids. That's kind of where I was at.
Yeah.
And that biological urge was very strong. And he appeared okay on paper. He was
Right.
successful and charming and good looking and motivated and kind and all those things, but there was a darker side. And it took a while for it to reveal itself to me. And he basically had been very successful young and was trying to duplicate himself from the past. And it ended up that we were in a huge debt and we lost everything. And I had a newborn, and we were basically ended up, we lost everything 3 different times. That should have given me a clue. The last time we lost our house, our furniture, we lost everything, and we were homeless. And at that point, my daughter was about 1 year old, and that was humiliating for me because
And difficult. I mean, like, where do you put a baby when you don't have a bed?
it was just awful. And I mean, I was counting pennies for food out of my pocket, it was difficult. And I couldn't tell my parents. I felt so embarrassed.
Of course.
But where I lived up in the Seattle area at the time. And I had a great group of girlfriends. And one of them was traveling and said, stay at my house. So we did. And my husband's father gave us money probably about a month later. And we moved into a small townhome. And I felt so grateful to have my own place again. And during all that chaos, I wasn't really attending to my spiritual practices, which I hadn't been doing for years before, my meditation. And I decided like I could finally calm down and not be in survival. I was meditating, and during one of my meditations, I had this incredible waking dream. And this was almost 40 years ago. Or I think it was 40 years ago. It totally changed the path of my life. And in this dream, because it felt so real and it was so visual, I was walking in a forest and I came into a clearing, and it was dusk or just a little after, and the moon was coming up and the moon was almost full. And coming from another area into this clearing was a group of people, and they were dressed in very different looking clothing than what we were dressed in at that time. It was like
Like
a
from outer space or like from a different culture?
different culture and a different time. It was
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
felt Celtic or Druid in nature.
Oh, interesting. Uh-huh.
They were carrying objects from nature into this clearing and laying them down on the ground.
Culture.
And one of them had this gorgeous, beautiful hammered gold chalice, and they placed it in the center of this circle of beautiful items that they had brought. And within the chalice, they each put what appeared to be important to them, something of value, into the chalice. And they started doing ceremony. They were chanting and moving and breathing and meditating together. And I just was so incredibly taken. I felt like an intruder in a way because I was just observing this. And then I came out of that vision, and it was probably about a week before the moon was full, and I decided, well, I have this kind of space right off my bedroom that had a little balcony. I think I'm going to try that. I'm going to try doing what I just saw happen. So I remember placing items around the center. Well, I didn't have a hammer gold chalice, So I took my salad bowl and I lined it with aluminum foil because I figured it was a reflective thing that they were using. And I put in there, jewelry and my checkbook and a credit card or two and some coins, whatever I had available that seemed important to me. And I swear, since that time, I've done that every month, some sort of ceremony with the
Wow.
full moon as it's building. And I never bounced a check again. My life totally transformed over a period of time. And it was probably within that year that I started a business. I started doing intuitive readings and healings for people using crystals, and this is before crystals were a thing. So
Right.
it was I this all this information was coming to me, and I started sharing it with my community, and over time, and this is also before computers. I had 1,000 people on my mailing list, and
Wow.
I was teaching
Awesome.
classes on the weekend about things I don't even know where I got all that information. And I was doing probably 25 readings a week. I was really busy and really successful. And yet, that was making my husband, who was still struggling, pretty jealous. So the relationship had changed. It was more like we were competitive at that point. And he was to watch our daughter, and it became conflicting. So I decided at a certain point, I realized that the people were relying on me to know what they needed to do. And I felt like that wasn't my job. My job wasn't to tell them what they needed. It was to help them become intuitive enough so that they could figure that out themselves. So
Beautiful.
I basically talked myself out of a job because I empower them. And I said, I'm not going to be doing these readings anymore. I'm going to parlay what I'm doing into something else. And so from that point, I opened a public relations and marketing company, and I brought in lecturers, speakers, authors, trainings from all over the country who were focused on the new age. And that is about the time my current husband, Michael, and I met. We were both married and unhappily. And but we got to know each other as friends over a couple of years, and he attended some of my courses that I offered, lectures and trainings that came up, and we just became really good friends. So, it was during the time that Michael and I finally got together, which was a couple of years after we initially met, and our relationships both had dissolved. We I remember our first date. He asked me what I wanted in life, and I told him that I think we both agreed we wanted to raise healthy, happy children and do good work in the world. And that's kind of been our focus ever since we've been together.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So did you have some kids? How many kids did you have?
Michael has two, and I have one. And blending families, when you have a 4, 6, and a 9-year-old, it's pretty crazy. And I figured we didn't want any more. That was enough for us.
Yeah.
We're each very successful, and we've got 6 grandchildren between the two of
Oh, how
us.
beautiful. Beautiful.
So we're very lucky. We're very blessed that way.
In this little story, you have sort of gone the whole gamut of the adversity, the awakening, the transformation, and then how you created greater connection and joy in your life. So, really the whole thing of it. So I'm going to break it down and just ask you to share with us a little bit more about how do you think that the adversity that you were experiencing in, the this incredible difficulty of survival when all of a sudden you're homeless and you got a baby and your husband was providing so well for you and all of a sudden it's not, besides it happening, you weren't expecting it to happen, like there was no clue in the world that that would ever even happen, right? So you're shocked, you're mystified, you're pissed, you're angry, you're all of
Right.
that, and you're trying to figure out how to get your next meal. So how how do you feel like it worked moving through that adversity lent itself to this vision that you had of the altar making in nature?
I think I was so humbled from the
Uh-huh.
loss.
Yeah.
I wasn't raised, I was I
Yeah.
may have not have had, the ultimate sort of mature emotional support from my parents.
The dubious parents. Yeah. Okay.
I think both my parents were pretty narcissistic people, and it
Uh-huh.
was pretty much about them than it was about us.
Right.
So I didn't have a lot of guidance, and I think that I think that particular husband was pretty narcissistic too. But
Hmm.
that's what I knew, I think that that was something I needed to work on. And I was not really raised to know what I needed.
Right.
So I think that the 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 intensity and the humbling that happened from losing everything
Yes.
and my conditioning I think was to be in a relationship that wasn't really satisfying, and I didn't know that I could be satisfied in a relationship. I think that it, in a certain way, all of that adversity empowered me to have to take responsibility and to
Yeah.
take charge because
Yeah.
I could see that he was incapable. And
Uh-huh.
that's a hard revelation when you're young and preconditioned and kind of, have a romantic view of marriage and yet haven't really faced the difficulties. And so when you finally do, it's like you have a choice. You either succumb and get really depressed and disillusioned and bitter, or you roll up your sleeve and just, kind
Yeah.
of take charge. And I think by taking charge, it really created another adversity situation because it really made it clear that I was not with a man who was willing to share the responsibility of creating a better life.
Yeah.
He kind of wanted me to be a secondary or an appendage to him.
Right.
And that really wasn't who I was, but I didn't know it at the time. I
Yeah.
didn't know it was okay to be a powerful woman.
So amazing that somehow that vision helped you, or somewhere along the line that you became aware of that. Maybe, you were doing meditation from way back then, and just somehow connecting with your true nature probably helped build those resources from within. I know that happened for me. And before I do want to talk about what you're just saying, but I do also have been wanting to interject for a moment to any listeners who may have found that I want to say that thinking that the person checks all the boxes and then you get the surprise that comes out of the jack in the box after the marriage, that isn't only for people that are, 60 and 70 and 80 years old. I mean, that happens in for all people. And certainly now young people, both men and women, have a lot more information and they have a lot more support around being clear about what they want, what they need, and their own personal sovereignty so that they know they don't have to be in a relationship with somebody that doesn't feel good. So just wanted to say that that could happen to anybody.
Right, right, right. It can. And I think that the difference is that I didn't have any information. There was
Right.
nobody.
No, there was
I had
nobody.
to
I
talk
mean,
to.
it was like, I mean, my mom, she had two average sized kids. She had two little kids and two little people. And she had there were no resources for her. So anyway, and okay, so let's go back to the fact that okay, so I want to ask you about the adversity of coming to the awareness that you couldn't stay in your marriage anymore, right?
Yeah.
And so how did that create, uh, you know, when you moved out of it, how did that move through that adversity? You worked through it. How did it help create more connection or did it create more connection for you in your life?
Well, it definitely freed me up to experience myself differently.
Uh-huh.
And I think that, and I also, became very, very well aware that I had the ultimate and only me was like creating the financial responsibility for my life in Seattle. And I was
Uh-huh.
running a business and being a full-time mom at the same time and having to manage that. My ex kind of went MIA and he never paid me child support. So I was really so much on my own.
Uh-huh.
And it was easier for me not to deal with him because he had this narcissistic personality and it was kind of
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I just was like, you know, and he
Yeah.
wasn't really that good with our daughter. He was just really focused on himself. And, it was definitely me being 100% responsible. And I don't think that I had an opportunity to really grow into being that kind of person, with responsibility like another person, so I grew up really fast in that period of time.
Yeah, you had a lot of fuel and a fertilizer. That's what I call
Absolutely.
challenges is fertilizer for our growth. Yeah,
I
a lot
I
of
had
fertilizer to become a autonomous and responsible, financially
I
independent person. It's awesome.
I and I remember taking a class during that time, because I also kind of felt like I wasn't adverse to being in a relationship again. Probably this was about a year after the split. I wasn't adverse to being in a relationship, but I needed clarity and what I was attracting because obviously I made some really stupid choices because I didn't know,
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember taking this class, and several of my girlfriends and I took it together. And it was interesting, and it was being taught by several different people, a little bit different. I can't even explain what it was at the time. All I remember is that you had to get really pretty clear on what it was you wanted.
Mhm.
And I had never really thought like that.
Well, who did?
That was nice to me. That was like a big deal. And if he was
Right.
attracted, go out with me, if you wanted to date me, if you wanted to marry me, well, why not? I mean, we just didn't know that we had the right to go, is he going to be good for me? I didn't think like that.
Is he going in the same direction as me? Does he want what I want? Yeah.
And I didn't even know what I wanted. I wasn't brought up to really know.
Right. I
It was such a crazy.
either. Yeah.
I remember I got so clear. And I remember writing all these lists of what I wanted and how what I was looking for and certain kinds of what he was emotionally and how he was physically and spiritually and financially, all this kind of stuff. Reams and reams of paper. And then I put that stuff away. I know I had to do some sort of process, and then I put it all away. And it was probably 2 or 3 weeks later that Michael and I met. I mean, became a couple. We had known each other, but we hadn't really been free to pursue a
Uh-huh,
relationship.
uh-huh. So beautiful. So, okay, so that's a great, I just gonna like how I interpret it in terms of this umbrella that we're under right now. Is it the having to become sovereign? You also were drawn to find out who you were, and part of that was answered by what do you want? And when you actually were able to get clarity about that, you had the magnetic power to draw to you exactly the thing that your heart was saying, this is who I am, and this is who will be a good match for me. So that is so awesome.
I wrote a book on it. I wrote a book on it so people can read that. It's
That the
my
Mr. Right, making
Mr. I put in I refined the process that I remember doing, and I put it in the book. And it is about magnetic energy because when you're single and looking, I hear it from women of all ages. I'm really ready to be in a relationship. All I want is a man who can, you know, travel with me or who has, the space in their life for a relationship. And I really think it's not about the exterior as much as it is about that magnetic energy of aligning yourself with the truth of who you are. And it draws to you opportunities and experiences that you might not have ever had before. But the thing is, um,
And that's a law of physics, and it's a law of it's a natural law, it's a universal law.
it's also interesting. People may that because I remember going through that class with 4 or 5 of my girlfriends.
Yeah.
It was only two of us that actually ended up getting married and,
Uh-huh.
finding a mate. The
Yeah.
other ones realized they became really flaky. They weren't really sincerely in their minds they were, but they
Yeah.
weren't willing to do the work.
Well, I think also that there's that thing of inner and outer that you can say, I want somebody who's this height or this financial XYZ or this social status, whatever, job, whatever. But then but you don't and when you're thinking about what you want, but you don't look inside of you and see what's going on in your inner experience, in your inner life. And once people can sort of dig down and get into that deeper truth, I think that that's when the more aligned and satisfying relationships are going to happen. So my guess would be that the two of you had that that ability to go deeper within yourself and get clarity inside of yourself, not just the sort of the outer pie, all the different sectors of your life, but actually this who am I really, and where is my life really taking me? Or where does my heart really want to go? All three of those, I guess. So,
And really, so in just a few days, like this weekend, Michael and I will be celebrating our 34th wedding anniversary.
how beautiful.
This one stuck.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So tell us about how the connection has led to, well, I asked you about the connection. So getting separated led to the class, getting to the knowledge, led to the strengthening your magnetic power, that led to bringing in Michael. So tell us a little bit about how connecting with Michael impacted you in your life, like, and also maybe your spiritual experience.
Well, he brought a different perspective of spirituality. I came from a very metaphysical background of
Oh, uh-huh,
spirituality.
uh-huh,
And so that was different. He had the devotional
mhm,
um, guru relationship
uh-huh.
form of spirituality. And even though I had dabbled in Eastern religions and meditation, I didn't have a guru. I didn't understand that. And I think I learned through him. He taught me, he was a TM teacher, so he taught me meditation,
Transcendental meditation, everybody. Go ahead.
transcendental meditation. And and over the years, probably 7 or 8 years later, we became teachers for the Art of Living Foundation together, which is kind of uh, the head of the Art of Living was Marishi's secretary, personal secretary. So it was kind of like, for us, it was following this lineage. And it really opened my heart to service, a lot of service. And it was through our teaching that, and through Mike's already knowledge of Vastu, because he was a Vastu architect and built meditation academy things for Maharishi over the years. But he also took that knowledge that he learned from Maharishi and he designed and built for Microsoft and Boeing. So he had corporate clients back in the Seattle area. And he was using his knowledge and taught me about Vastu. So we were teachers for Art of Living, and we were teaching meditation and yoga and Vedic breathing. But our sadhana group, our group of meditators, were still struggling and suffering. And so when we added the Vastu that we
Mhm.
were basically integrating into our relationship, it started changing people's lives. And we have some of those clients we've had for 30 plus years.
Yeah.
We've done their parents, we've done them, we've done their children, and it's like we're part of their family. And these are
Beautiful.
people who are now like
Yeah.
senior vice presidents at Amazon and Boeing and World Bank and NASA. I mean, they're everywhere. These are people who started out with us and know us and use our services to, whenever they move, whether it's a new office or a, new home, or if they become real successful, want Michael to design a house. I mean, we just do what we can to help people, and it obviously helps them a lot because we have a lot of clients all over the world who've been, using our expertise forever. I
Okay,
feel
I'm going to stop you for a second because I'm interested in the quality of connection between you and Michael. How is that different from your first marriage because of the fact that you had worked through the adversity and had grown into some kind of position of greater insight about yourself and empowerment?
I can just say, what you see is what you get. He is probably the kindest person I've ever met. He's very loving and gentle and very deeply interested in the well-being of others. And he's just that kind of person. He
And
is
how
a
did it make you feel to receive that, to be with a person like that?
Well, for me, I had never been with the guy who had been my friend first.
Uh-huh.
So I was kind of like, if he was good looking and rather edgy, that was the attraction, right? I
Right,
mean,
right. That's the ego way.
that's the way we were kind of like, set up. And I think, it was difficult for me to realize that there was such a deep connection, and it was a little scary. And it happened very quickly. Once we went out on a date, it was like within a very short period of time we were living together. It was so clear to us that we belonged together.
Yeah,
And
nice.
I think for me, being a mother of a young child, I was very clear also that I wasn't just playing around. It was like I did not want to set the example for my daughter that the men were like on a revolving door thing. So I was very clear with them up front, this is for me, this is very serious. Like you have to be clear what you're doing here because I am. I'm a mom.
And so you had this, like, it sounds like you had a clarity around the rightness of it, which
Right.
maybe came from a deeper type of connection. And
It was like we were finally coming home. That's what it felt like. We
very
both
beautiful.
both had been in pretty awful marriages, pretty
Uh-huh.
tumultuous
Uh-huh.
marriages, with people who just did not honor us. And I think we both were pleasers. And it was like here his whole heart was out there on his sleeve. And I realized that,
And
this is
lucky you.
lucky me.
Lucky you. Okay, so one more question is how do you feel like that more connection with him, more connection with yourself, maybe a deeper relationship with your spiritual side has impacted your experience of joy in your life, like the joy that you experience doing your work or with your relationships or expressing yourself or whatever.
The thing that comes up for me is that Michael was able to provide me with a feeling of being safe.
Uh-huh. Beautiful.
I think for somebody like me who had just come from a very tumultuous and somewhat disheartening
Yeah.
relationship, he was more interested in making sure that I felt, you know, secure. And
But I think he also made you feel seen. Somehow I'm getting that sense.
and this is to this day. He adores me. And it's like my brain, it's like a yeah, but no, it is like he unconditionally loves me. And he's like a rock for me. And that gave me the ability to really grow. He's never really said you can't do something.
Uh-huh.
So I went back to school and I got my master's degree, and I'm the one that kind of like pushed the business to create the Vastu business because
Uh-huh.
he had another job that he was doing with his father, which was full time. So this was our little mom and
Oh,
pop
yeah,
together.
yeah. Uh-huh.
So it was like we became such a team. We have this business together, but we don't do anything. I don't step on his toes. He doesn't step on mine. He's the Vastu guy and the astrologer. I do the more, kind of like woo-woo stuff, and he just supports that. So I'm very, very blessed.
Yeah, and does it make you feel joyful?
It it's it it is kind of at that place where your heart is open because you're being accepted and loved.
Mhm.
And so you feel that you can do what's in front of you to do and do it without fear that you'll be somehow stopped or judged. I'm always feeling encouraged by him and supported. And that is, sincerely a joy.
Beautiful. Wonderful. A joy. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us your amazing story of moving from adversity to awakening. And it sounds like your awakening has led where most people's awakening leads, which is to helping to awaken the lives of many, many others. So, and Michael also. So, thank you for, I want to acknowledge you for your staying the path, for continuing. And it's interesting that you started meditating at a young age and like, you just had support. It feels like step after step after step. And your life has continued to evolve and bring you to greater levels of fulfillment. Like you do work you love, you help people, they get better. And what could be better than that, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, and your family has grown and your business, you connect with people from multi generations of families, which is a great testament to the ability to, build connection, right? So, anyway, I want to share with the okay, before I go on to your offering of your class and the bonus that's available for people here, she's offering a 20% bonus. A 20% discount and some bonuses. Would you tell us, is there anything else that you'd like to share with the audience about everything we've been talking about this morning?
Well, I would just like to talk a little bit about this course that I've created because I
Okay,
think that
great. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it is this course really it came out of my work with Michael, our travels. We traveled all over the world to sacred sites all over the world to see how other cultures in ancient times basically integrated that connection between the divine and their world.
Mhm.
And it was through uh, a period of time while I was in school and Michael and I were traveling in India that I came up with this idea of the altars after we were at the Mahakumbh Mela up in
Oh,
Rishikesh,
wow.
where there was 1 million people
Yeah,
doing ceremonies and all these incredible enlightened masters coming out of the caves and Brahma bulls walking all along the street. And we were staying in an ashram and they were doing yagyas, which are these fire ceremonies, all day, all night. And I could actually feel them in my dreams. And it was at that one of those yagyas, I came up with the idea of these altars, which was what I went back to my graduate committee and asked them if, it was like something that would be possible for me to do my research on creating small sacred environments that I called altars based on the elements that are in puja or in a yagya.
yeah.
And they were head of the department was a PhD architect from UC Berkeley, and my advisor was an architect from the University of Cairo. And so they were pretty trippy guys, and they were like, "Let's go for it." And
Awesome.
the research that I did with with people in my community, my friends, my family, just changed their lives. So this course is based on our first book, which
The
came out,
of
Altars of Power
altars
and
of
Grace,
power and grace. Yeah, and
and
this
it
is
came out 20 years ago.
yeah.
But people have been bugging me all this time to do a course on it, and I finally have
Well,
done
I
it.
I have the book. In the book, I set up a bunch of altars. Not, yeah, I've set up a bunch of altars, and they really helped a lot. Mr. Wright hasn't shown up yet, but we're still working on that. Maybe should get that book and focus right in on that because I think there's a lot of rituals, and I know that you do full moon ritual every month.
Right, right. And I think also the doing the full moon and the and new moon rituals is a wonderful way to create community as well.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Lovely. Okay, so you guys take the course, buy the book, all that stuff, and you can go to her website, which is www.vastu creations. It's V as Victor, ASTU creations, plural.com / special. And when you go, if you would like to get 20% off, Robin is offering a 20% discount to people from this podcast, and you can go to the place where you sign up, and there'll be a place for a coupon, and you just put in my first name, which is Peggy. There it is on the screen for a second, PEGGY, and you will get the 20% discount. The course also is offering 7 bonuses. So, I mean, I don't know what they are, but I'm sure they're awesome. Just like Michael and Robin Mastro are so awesome. And I want to thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your story of awakening and building greater connection and joy in the world, more fulfillment for yourself and others. Thank you so much, Robin. Anything else?
No, that's it. Seems
Okay.
good.
Okay, great. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode of From Adversity to Awakening. Don't forget to subscribe, send me a review. All of those would be big, that would be like a big hug for me. I appreciate it so much. All right, much love to everyone, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks, Robin. So long for now.